The late afternoon sun painted the city park in shades of gold and amber. Parents laughed with their children, dogs chased after frisbees, and the air carried the sweet scent of cotton candy from a nearby vendor. It was one of those rare, perfect moments where everything seemed alive except for one man sitting quietly on a wooden bench. Jason Miller watched the playground with tired eyes. He was in his mid-30s, dressed neatly but plainly, the kind of man who blended into the background without meaning to. In one hand, he held a coffee cup gone cold. In the other, a small notebook filled with doodles his daughter had made that morning. Every Sunday after church, he brought Sophia to this park. It was their tradition, a way to hold on to the simple things after life had taken so much away. 2 years ago, his wife, Lily, had passed from an unexpected illness, leaving Jason to raise their daughter alone. Since then, he tried to keep every promise he'd made to her, especially the one about never letting Sophia forget how loved she was. He looked up as Sophia ran toward him, her small curls bouncing in the sunlight. She was 6 now, bright, curious, and endlessly talkative. "Daddy, look," she said, holding out a wilted daisy. "It's for Mommy. Can we take it home?" Jason smiled softly. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll put it by her picture." She beamed and skipped back toward the sandbox, humming under her breath. That's when he noticed them, a young woman sitting alone on the far bench, a girl about Sophia's age beside her. The woman looked delicate, maybe early 30s, her posture straight, but her eyes distant. The little girl, however, seemed restless, tapping her hands on her knees and watching the other children with longing. Jason's heart clenched when he realized the girl wasn't talking. She was trying to communicate, but not with words. Her hands moved in precise, rhythmic motions. Sign language. The woman beside her tried to calm her, smiling gently, but there was a flicker of exhaustion in her eyes, a kind of quiet heartbreak Jason recognized too well. A few minutes later, Sophia came running again. "Daddy, that girl isn't playing," she said, frowning. "She looks sad." Jason followed his daughter's gaze. "Maybe she's just shy, honey. Can I ask her to play?" Jason hesitated. He taught Sophia to be kind, to notice people who were left out, but he didn't want to intrude if the child had special needs. Before he could answer, Sophia was already halfway across the playground, waving enthusiastically. The woman looked startled as Sophia knelt beside her daughter and began talking. The girl stared back, confused but curious. Then, to Jason's amazement, Sophia slowly raised her hands and began to sign a few awkward but recognizable gestures she'd learned in school last month. The little girl's eyes widened, then she grinned. The woman her mother watched in disbelief as her daughter began to sign back, her hands fluttering in excited rhythm. Sophia laughed and mimicked her movements, giggling each time she got one wrong. Jason rose from his bench, smiling without realizing it. He walked over, his voice gentle. "She's got a way of making friends fast." The woman looked up, smiling shyly. "She does. Your daughter's wonderful. My name's Hannah." "Jason," he said, extending a hand. "And that's Sophia." Hannah nodded, her gaze softening as she watched the two girls playing. "My daughter, Amelia, she doesn't talk much. She's deaf. Most people don't even try to talk to her." Jason's chest tightened. Sophia's school taught some basic signs. She insisted on practicing with everyone, even the cat. That made Hannah laugh, the sound light and genuine. For a few moments, they just stood there, two parents bound by quiet struggles neither had spoken aloud. Jason saw the fatigue in Hannah's eyes, the kind that comes from carrying too much alone. He knew that look all too well, and as the sun dipped lower behind the trees, the two children played like they'd known each other forever. Jason glanced at Hannah again. Something in that small, ordinary moment felt different, like the beginning of a chapter he didn't know he needed. But neither Jason nor Hannah knew that the simple encounter in the park would spark a chain of events that would change all 4 of their lives and lead them to rediscover love most unexpectedly. Over the next few weekends, the park became more than just a playground. It became a meeting place. A quiet, unspoken routine had begun to form between Jason and Hannah. Their children pulling them together like magnets, neither could resist. Each Sunday afternoon, Sophia would rush ahead toward the swings, already calling out to Amelia in half sign, half giggle. The two little girls played for hours, their laughter one voiced, one silent, somehow blending into a harmony only they could create. For Jason and Hannah, It was easier at first to stay near the benches. They talked between glances, exchanging shy smiles and stories that began with polite small talk and slowly unfolded into something more honest. Hannah was a language teacher, she explained, though she'd stopped working full-time after Amelia was born. Her husband, David, had passed away when their daughter was just a baby, a car accident that had stolen not just his life, but the sense of peace she'd once had. Jason listened quietly. He didn't interrupt, didn't fill the silence with unnecessary words. When she spoke, he simply nodded, as though he understood, because he did. She eventually noticed the thin silver band still on his finger. "You still wear it," she said softly. He looked down at his hand, then at the ground. "Yeah, it's a reminder of promises I'm still keeping." Hannah smiled sadly. "Lily, right?" He looked surprised. "Sophia told you?" "She talks about her mom all the time. She said Lily used to draw flowers on her lunchbox every morning." Jason laughed quietly. "Yeah, even when she was late for work, she'd never skip that part," said it made the day feel less ordinary. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was comforting. Two people sitting side by side, their shared grief forming an invisible bridge between them. Amelia ran up to them, her cheeks flushed with excitement. She signed quickly, her little hands moving faster than Jason could follow. Hannah chuckled, translating softly. "She said she and Sophia made a secret club. You can only join if you know how to sign." Jason smiled. "I guess I'd better start learning then." The next day, he did just that. He spent his lunch break watching online sign language tutorials, repeating gestures in front of his phone camera until his co-workers teased him, but he didn't care. That evening, when he met the girls again at the park, he was ready. Amelia spotted him first and tilted her head curiously. He smiled and raised his hands. "Hello," he signed, careful and deliberate. "How are you?" Her jaw dropped. Then she burst into silent laughter, clapping her hands before signing back rapidly. Jason could only catch half of it, but the joy on her face told him everything he needed to know. From the bench, Hannah watched, her heart full. Later that night, after the children had gone home, she found herself scrolling through her phone before bed, replaying the moment Jason had signed those words. His gestures weren't perfect, but they were sincere. She hadn't realized until now how long it had been since someone had tried. The next Sunday, she arrived at the park early, a small box in her hands. When Jason showed up with Sophia, she smiled and handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "Flashcards," she said. "Basic signs. I used to use them with my students. Figured you might like to practice." He flipped through them words like friend, family, thank you, love. "Thanks," he said quietly. "Don't thank me yet," she teased. "You'll hate them by next week." Jason laughed. "Then I'll make you coffee in revenge." It became their thing. Every Sunday, lessons disguised as conversations, laughter shared over spilled coffee, their children inventing secret sign codes, only they understood. Weeks turned into months. Spring melted into early summer. Somewhere between all those afternoons, Jason found himself looking forward to seeing Hannah more than he wanted to admit. But he wasn't the only one. Sometimes, when he caught her watching him, there was a softness in her eyes, a quiet warmth that made his heart stutter. And yet, both of them carried the same fear, that letting someone in again might mean losing something all over. Neither said it aloud, but the air between them was charged with what might be something fragile, something healing. What neither of them knew was that one unexpected night, a sudden storm, a frightened child, and an overdue confession would finally break through the silence they'd both been living in for far too long. It started as an ordinary evening. The park was quiet, the sky heavy, with the kind of gray clouds that promised rain, but hadn't yet made good on the threat. Hannah almost canceled that night's playdate, but Amelia had been so excited to see Sophia that she couldn't bring herself to say no. By the time they reached the park, the air was cool and still. Jason and Sophia were already there, sharing a small paper bag of fries from the food truck nearby. "Hey," Jason called with a smile, waving them over. "We might get rained on, but the kids refuse to believe in weather forecasts." Hannah laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "They're unstoppable together." For the next hour, they let the children play. The two girls splashed in puddles left from the morning drizzle, their laughter echoing through the empty park. Jason and Hannah sat beneath the gazebo. watching them with a comfortable silence that said more than words ever could. But then the wind shifted. It came fast, a sudden, biting gust that sent leaves scattering and swings creaking. The sky darkened, thunder rumbling like distant drums. Jason frowned. We should probably head back. Hannah nodded, calling to the girls. But they didn't hear her, or maybe they just didn't want to stop. Amelia, in particular, was twirling in the rain, her hands open to the sky, pure joy lighting up her face. Amelia! Hannah shouted again, her voice cutting through the wind. But in that moment, a sharp crack of thunder rolled overhead. The sound was deafening, and Amelia froze. For a child who couldn't hear, thunder wasn't just noise, it was vibration, pressure, a sudden change in the world's rhythm. Panic flashed across her face as the sky flashed white. Jason didn't think. He was already running. The rain hit hard as he reached her, kneeling beside the trembling child. Her eyes were wide, her breath quick and shallow. He remembered what Hannah had said, that Amelia could feel sounds, that they rattled through her body like invisible waves. He crouched lower and lifted his hands. It's okay, he signed slowly. You're safe. Amelia blinked, tears mixing with rain. She hesitated, then nodded. He smiled, exaggeratedly pointing to the sky. Just clouds talking, he signed, moving his hands playfully to mimic a silly face. Her lips twitched. A half smile. Relief. By the time Hannah reached them, Jason had Amelia laughing again, spinning his hands dramatically as if to tell her the storm was nothing but sky monsters arguing about the weather. When the rain eased, Hannah dropped to her knees beside them, pulling Amelia into her arms. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. She gets overwhelmed when things change suddenly. I didn't think... Jason shook his head. You did fine. She's okay. They sat under the gazebo as the storm softened into drizzle. The air smelled like wet earth and pine. Hannah held her daughter close, rocking her gently while Jason sat across from them, drenched but calm. After a while, she looked up. You're good with her, she said softly. Better than most. He smiled faintly. I just listened differently. The simplicity of it made her heart ache. As the rain quieted, Sophia joined them, chattering about how the thunder sounded like angry clouds bumping into each other. Amelia laughed silently beside her, signing her own version of the story. Jason and Hannah exchanged a glance that lingered too long. Something shifted between them, then not just gratitude, but something deeper. Something neither was ready to name. When it was finally time to go, Hannah hesitated before leaving. Jason, she said quietly, would you and Sophia like to come to dinner sometime as a thank you? He started to decline, the polite refusal already forming. But then he saw Amelia peeking from behind her mother's arm, signing please with hopeful eyes. Hess smiled. We'd love to. Hannah's lips curved into the kind of smile that felt like sunlight after a storm. As they walked away in opposite directions, Jason turned once, watching the fading figure of a woman and her daughter silhouetted against the wet pavement. Something inside him stirred a feeling he hadn't let himself feel in a long, long time. Neither of them knew it yet, but that simple dinner invitation would mark the start of something far greater than gratitude, because healing had already begun to weave its way between them, and soon neither heart would be the same. The following Friday evening, Jason stood outside Hannah's apartment building, holding a slightly crumpled bouquet of daisies. Sophia clutched his hand, practically bouncing with excitement. Daddy, she whispered loudly, do you think Amelia will like my new hair clips? Jason smiled down at her. If she doesn't, she'll pretend to. She's polite like that. Sophia grinned. I made her a bracelet too. I hope it fits. Before he could answer, the door opened, and Hannah appeared wearing a soft green dress that made her eyes glow even in the hallway light. Amelia stood beside her, wearing a similar shade, smiling shyly at Sophia. Come in, Hannah said warmly, stepping aside. Her apartment was cozy bookshelves stacked with novels and children's drawings taped to the fridge. The aroma of roasted vegetables and fresh bread filled the air. Jason immediately noticed the framed photo on the mantel, a smiling man with Hannah and baby Amelia. He didn't stare long, but long enough to understand. Dinner was simple pasta, garlic bread, and laughter. The girls took turns telling jokes to each other, with Sophia occasionally translating out loud. Now and then, Hannah would laugh so hard she'd have to put her fork down. Jason hadn't seen her laugh like that before. It was different, unguarded, real. "Are you sure you don't cook like this every night?" he teased. She rolled her eyes. "I assure you, most nights it's cereal or chicken nuggets. You caught me on my best behavior." Sophia piped up. "My daddy burns toast sometimes." Jason groaned. "Traitor." Everyone laughed. The tension that usually lingered in the room, grief, caution, loneliness seemed to fade, replaced by warmth. After dinner, the girls moved to the living room floor to play a board game. Hannah brewed coffee while Jason helped her carry dishes to the sink. "Thank you for this," she said softly, washing a plate. "You have no idea how much it means for Amelia to have a friend like Sophia." Jason leaned against the counter. "She's a great kid. So is her mom." Hannah froze, glancing up. "You think so?" He smiled. "I know so." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the dishwasher filled the silence between them. It wasn't awkward, it was charged, like the air before a song begins. Then Hannah looked down, her fingers still on the dish towel. "You know, after David died, I didn't think I'd ever let someone close again. I kept telling myself I was fine, just focusing on Amelia, on work. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared of losing anyone else." Jason nodded slowly. "I get that. After Lily passed, I told myself love wasn't worth the risk. It's easier to survive alone than to break twice." Their eyes met. The honesty between them was heavy, but comforting, like finding someone who spoke your language after years of silence. Sophia's giggle from the living room broke the moment. "Daddy, Amelia says you have to play." Jason grinned, relief and warmth washing over him. "Guess that's my cue." He joined the girls on the floor, letting Amelia teach him the rules of their chaotic, laughter-filled game. Hannah sat nearby, watching her heart full but cautious. When the evening wound down, Jason and Sophia prepared to leave. At the door, Hannah hesitated. "Jason," she said softly, "would you maybe like to come by again next week? Just for dinner. No storms this time, I promise." He chuckled. "As long as there's pasta involved, we'll be here." She smiled, one of those small, private smiles meant only for him. As they walked back to their car, Sophia skipped ahead, humming to herself. Jason glanced up at the night sky, stars glimmering faintly through the city haze. For the first time in years, the world didn't feel so heavy. At home, Hannah lingered by the door long after they'd gone. She touched the side of her face where laughter still lingered like sunlight. It scared her, that feeling, the way her heart seemed to remember what hope felt like. And in a small apartment across town, Jason sat beside Sophia's bed as she drifted off to sleep. She murmured, "Daddy." Hannah smiles like Mommy used to. His chest ached. He brushed her hair from her face and whispered, "Yeah, sweetheart, she really does." He turned off the light, the darkness settling around him like quiet acceptance. Something was changing, something gentle but unstoppable. Neither of them realized that love had already begun to grow softly, silently between shared laughter and sleepless nights. But soon, life would test just how much their fragile new happiness could endure. By late summer, the little rituals had multiplied. Wednesday nights were now movie and pizza nights at Hannah's place. Saturdays, Jason brought the girls to the farmer's market before everyone met for brunch. What had begun as gratitude had turned into comfort and easy rhythm that felt dangerously close to a family. On a bright August afternoon, the four of them picnicked near the lake. The girls chased dragonflies while Jason and Hannah sat on a blanket, the sunlight flickering through the trees. "You ever think," Hannah said, watching Amelia and Sophia twirl, "that happiness sneaks up on you? One day, you wake up and realize you stopped waiting for disaster." Jason chuckled softly. "Or you realize you're allowed to have it again." She turned toward him. "And do you?" He hesitated. "I'm starting to." Their eyes met long enough for both to feel the question neither dared to ask. But happiness, as they both knew, never came without a test. A week later, Jason was offered a promotion at the architecture firm Better Pay. But the catch was relocation, 2 states away. He hadn't even applied. His old supervisor had recommended him. That night, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at the email while Sophia drew pictures beside him. A small stick-figure family holding hands under a rainbow. 4 people, not 2. "Daddy," she asked, "will we still see Hannah and Amelia if we move?" He looked at her, his heart twisting. "I don't know, sweetheart." When he finally told Hannah, her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. That's wonderful, Jason. You deserve it. I don't know if I want it, he admitted. It's everything I thought I needed before. They sat in silence. The word before hung between them like a ghost. You can't turn down a future because of us, she said, forcing a smile. Maybe the future isn't somewhere else, he replied quietly. Maybe it's here. But the decision wasn't simple. Over the next few days, Jason found himself torn between stability and something deeper, something terrifyingly real. Then, one evening, everything changed. Amelia fell ill at school. Hannah called him in a panic. The nurse suspected a severe allergic reaction. Jason was there within minutes, scooping the frightened girl into his arms while Hannah struggled not to cry. At the hospital, he stayed beside them, holding Hannah's hand as doctors worked quickly. Hours later, Amelia was stable, fast asleep under soft white sheets. Hannah sat beside her daughter's bed, tears slipping down her cheeks. I thought I'd lost her, she whispered. Jason squeezed her hand gently. You didn't. She's okay. She looked up at him, eyes shining with gratitude and exhaustion. You came so fast. You didn't even have to ask, he said. Something inside her broke open. Without thinking, she leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. The quiet hum of hospital machines filled the room, but for that moment, the world shrank to just the two of them, grief, fear, love, and relief, tangled together in silence. When she pulled back, she managed a shaky smile. You always know what to say without saying anything. He laughed softly. Guess I'm learning from the best. By the time Amelia woke the next morning, the storm had passed. Jason stayed until sunrise, helping with paperwork, fetching W water, and making Sophia laugh when she arrived to visit. Hannah watched him move through the room, steady, gentle, present, and realized something she'd been denying for months. She wasn't just grateful for him, she loved him. Later, when he offered to drive them home, she didn't refuse. In the car, the girls fell asleep in the back seat, heads leaning together. Hannah turned to him and whispered, You'll have to decide soon, won't you, about the job? He nodded, eyes on the road. Yeah, but maybe what I really need isn't a new place, it's a new start. Her heart skipped. With us? He smiled faintly. If you'll have me. She didn't answer not yet, but her hand found his, and that said enough. But even as everything seemed to fall into place, Jason's decision would set in motion one final turning point, one that would test their love, redefine family, and prove that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay. The world outside Jason's window was quiet, the early autumn light spilling across the kitchen table. His laptop screen still showed the open email from the firm, final offer, reply by Monday. He had read those words at least a dozen times. In another life, before everything changed, he would have accepted without hesitation. More money, more security, a fresh start. But now, the idea of leaving felt wrong, like tearing pages out of a book that wasn't finished. He glanced across the table at Sophia, who was carefully folding a paper crane. What's that for? It's for Amelia, she said. She's still scared of storms. I told her cranes mean good luck. Jason smiled, his heart tightening. You're a good friend, you know that? Sophia grinned. You're a good daddy. He laughed softly, but his chest ached. She didn't know how much he needed to hear that, how much he feared failing her again. By Sunday afternoon, he'd made up his mind. When they arrived at Hannah's, the smell of cinnamon filled the air. Amelia and Sophia were already sprawled across the living room floor, surrounded by crayons and construction paper. Hannah looked up from the kitchen, her hair tucked loosely behind her ear. Hey, you two, I was starting to think you got lost. Jason smiled, walking over. Not lost. Just figuring things out. She handed him a mug of coffee. And did you? He nodded, setting it down. About the job. Hannah's smile faltered just slightly. When do you leave? Jason shook his head. I'm not going anywhere. She blinked, surprised. You turned it down? He exhaled, a small, steady smile forming. Yeah, it's a good offer, but it's not home. This is. Hannah's lips parted, but no words came. She looked at him for a long moment, the kind of look that speaks in heartbeats instead of sentences. You're sure? She finally asked. He nodded. For the first time in years, I am. The girls ran up, interrupting them, waving their colorful paper cranes. Family project, Amelia signed excitedly, tugging Hannah's sleeve. Jason raised a brow. Family project, huh? Sophia grinned. We're making a picture wall. You have to be in it too. Hannah laughed, blushing. They've decided we don't get a say. Jason looked around at the laughter, the warmth, the quiet hum of belonging that filled every corner of the room, and something inside him settled. They spent the afternoon taking photos. The girls insisted on silly poses, Jason pretending to juggle, Hannah crossing her eyes, and everyone making heart signs in the air. When it was done, the wall by the dining table was a collage of light, a story written in smiles. Later, when the children fell asleep, Jason and Hannah stood side by side, looking at the pictures. I forgot what this felt like, she said softly. Home, I mean. He turned to her, voice gentle. You built it, Hannah. You just needed someone to remind you it was still here. She looked up at him then, her eyes reflecting the soft glow from the lamp. And what about you, Jason? What did you need? He smiled faintly. A reason to stop surviving. I think I found it. For a moment, they said nothing. Then Hannah reached up, touching his cheek, her voice trembling but certain. Stay then. Stay with us. He didn't need to answer with words. He simply leaned in and kissed her, slow, real, and full of everything they'd been too afraid to say. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves, gentle and alive. In the living room, two children slept beneath the paper crane mobile, safe under the roof of the family they had unknowingly built together. In that quiet, imperfect home, something finally clicked back into place. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning to live alongside it. And in the end, Jason realized something Lily had once told him years ago was still true. Love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it's just a small, steady light, the kind that stays when the storm finally passes. Because sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin with grand gestures. They start with one small act of kindness, one shared moment of courage, and one simple word that changes everything. Hello.